Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Latinx Games Festival. You're right now viewing the engineering panel. My name is Corley Rosario. I'm going to be the moderator today. And we have wonderful guests with us. Would everyone like to introduce themselves one by one?
Sure. I'll go first. My name is Denise Martinez. I'm a software engineer at Riot Games, and I work on the player platform initiative on the client team. So we work on the desktop client.
Awesome. Yeah, I can go next. My name is Oscar Sanchez. I'm a senior software engineer at Sony PlayStation, and I'm glad this is happening this week because I can say what I did. But I'm a product owner and I work on the game help feature on the PlayStation 5.
Nice. You've been busy this week.
Oh yeah.
Congrats.
Thank
yeah,
you.
congrats.
I'll go next. I'm Cesar Gonzalez. I am a game engineer with Niantic. I work mostly with UI systems and UI infrastructure, basically, on our project.
So my name is Carlos Macias. I'm an engineer, a software engineer at Niantic. I've been at Niantic for 2.5 years now. I work on Ingress on the client side.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to be part of this panel too. So we know that a lot of our viewers right now, they come from different parts of Latin America. A lot of people actually don't know very much about the game industry or how engineering works, in the game industry. And we all come from different walks of life as well. And I just wanted to ask a little bit about what your experience has been and where did you grow up? Where do you come from? Let's start there.
Yeah, I'll start this time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I grew up in Miami, Florida. My dad's from Guatemala, my mom's from Honduras, so they immigrated to Miami like right before they had me. Growing up, programming and computers and stuff weren't really a thing for my parents, probably like many of you guys. So they were kind of shocked when I had to break the news that I was into math and not into professional baseball. To my dad, he really took that personally. But yeah, growing up, Miami is kind of like this cool culture pot because, there's so many like Cubans, Puerto Ricans, and just like huge diversity there. And Florida kind of sucks in general, but Miami is like a really nice bright spot. So I'm pretty happy. But yeah, my parents were really supportive, and ultimately it kind of just led me into them being okay with me playing video games and kind of like trying out the internet and like working on our, taking over the phone line and working on computers and stuff. So just kind of led me to kind of look into that a little bit further until I, started like looking into programming, and here I am now.
Awesome. Cesar, what about you?
Well, I am Colombian born. I was born and I grew up in Bogota. But I was not always on the engineering path. Let me just start with my going all the way back to when I was 7. My father used to work for a bank. So one day the bank just out of the blue decided, hey, you know what, computers are going to be a thing in the future. So in around 1985, 1986, they sent out a IBM PC XT to them. And what that meant was that in the household, we had one of the few personal computers that had been, sent to Colombia at that time. And he just left it at home. He didn't really do much with anything, but one thing led to another, and I found Space Invaders on that computer, and I started playing that and kind of got addicted to that.
You took advantage of the computer.
Yeah. Fast forward 16 years after that, and I started studying literature in the Universidad de los Andes in Bogota. And engineering was not even a part of my compass until I was here in the United States. When I joined Blizzard Entertainment as a localization QA analyst. So at that point, QA tools for localization analysts was nothing. You basically had to copy paste everything, check every single string in things like World of Warcraft and StarCraft 2 by bringing the screen up and manually doing the work. And out of sheer desperation, I taught myself how to do Lua so I could actually build mods that we could include into the client that would actually make tasks that usually take like a minute or two take about 6 seconds. And learning programming that way led from one thing to another, where they said, well, hey, you can do a little bit of programming here. How about this? How about that? And I got shifted around until I was writing the localization code for the StarCraft Remastered project, where we extracted all the text from the old clients and put it into a new format and shipped that game out. And at the same time, I was learning Unity because it turned out, hey, there's something that I can do. And one thing led to another, and a couple of years later, here I am at Niantic. That's how I got here.
And go ahead.
Oh yeah. For me, let's see. How did I get interested in engineering? Well, my parents came from Mexico, very young, and didn't really have the opportunity to go to school. Basically, they had to work to contribute to the to pay rent and put food on the table, and so they had kids pretty young, and I my dad was a mechanic, and I think that's kind of where it all started for me. He always would be like, you can always tell me you could always learn anything just by opening it, right? Just like open it, figure it out. That's like that's
Reverse engineering.
Basically. And he just is, I think like I think back on that now, I feel like if opportunity was different for him, like he would definitely be an engineer, I think, like but just he had different life circumstances. So that I think, yeah, I was always really inquisitive, like I loved learning stuff. I like when my parents eventually got divorced, and we were low on money, but we eventually got like a computer from a family friend, but it didn't have any it didn't have a modem. And but it did have some games on there, and some of the first games I played on there was like Wolfenstein and like games I probably shouldn't have been playing as a child, but I played them. And then yeah, I was always just like I kept trying to figure out how to like get it to go. Like I couldn't figure out why it wasn't on the why I wasn't able to connect to the internet. So I looked through the operating system. I looked through the Windows kernel folders, and I guess I eventually learned that, okay, there's a piece of hardware missing from here. But and eventually I started making web pages for things I was into, specifically anime. But I didn't have I didn't know what any of this really was. I didn't have access to nobody. I didn't really get introduced to computer science until high school. I took AP computer science in high school eventually for as a classmate was telling me that she was taking the class, and kind of just I went with her because she was like, oh, I don't want to take it by myself. And I really liked it. But I actually I went the other direction. I studied history in college, and for a little bit, and then I think that was mostly because imposter syndrome and things like that. I felt even though I liked computer science, I didn't have a really great experience in high school. It was very male oriented and dominated even in that class, and it was kind of just the teacher wasn't very very nice. So I just kind of steered away from that, but eventually I got back into it from a friend encouraged me. He's he was doing the program too, and he was just you know this stuff better than I do. You should why aren't you in this major? And so I kind of that kind of helped me take that next step and study and go and switch majors. I was probably 3 years into history, but I changed majors and then graduated from computer science, and actually went to Riot, started Riot Games shortly after that. But I actually started as QA and got most of my work experience that way by automating a lot of the manual things that needed to happen for. I worked on the patcher team, so manually testing the patcher required a bunch of tedious setup, and so I like I just wrote a bunch of scripts to automate it just because I didn't want to have to I didn't have to deal with it, and I didn't want to, and so that kind of sparked that interest in me again. Like, because I felt like QA is kind of, I felt like that was a good fit for me, just because I had a really hard time getting that work experience, like in college, like getting those internships, and I only was able to get internships in IT, and so anyway, like eventually I was able to get that work experience, like that writing those scripts just like sparked that interest in me again. I really enjoyed coding, and I just continued doing that, and I just kept getting more opportunities to build features and work on code, and eventually I took the software engineering interview, and I've been a software engineer for about 2 years now at Riot, and it's I think I really love programming and solving problems. I think it just took me a while to kind of believe in myself.
Yeah, and find the path as well. Like, it's really interesting. Both you and Caesar studied very different things compared to what you ended up working in, and that seems to be a sort of common theme across the industry as well. Like, you have people who are theater majors that are amazing programmers and engineers, and they just kind of own it, and also people that start through QA. That seems to be pretty common too, right, for engineers. Carlos, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, I was born and raised in Mexico, in the state of Michoacan. So I started playing video games very early. I remember the first Mario Bros. Game, and I also spent a lot of time on arcade salons. Yeah, so that's what sparked my interest in video games. Then at 16, we moved to the United States with my parents, and I didn't know what I wanted to. I knew I wanted to do games, but I didn't know much computer science, or I hadn't done any programming. So after high school, I did a little bit of programming during high school, like HTML and web dev a little bit. I went to community college, and then from community college, I transferred to UC Berkeley, and I got my degree in computer science from there. Then my first job was because I didn't get any internships during my college years. So I had experience, but it was in IT. So I took pretty much any job that I found doing web dev first. And then a friend of mine told me about this startup and doing Facebook games. So I went and worked with them for 9 months before the company went down, or the startup went down. So after that, I went back to web dev for 2 years. Then I got an opportunity to work at Glue Mobile, and then after Glue Mobile, I've been working in games. I worked at Nickelodeon before Niantic, and then I've been at Niantic for 2.5 years.
Awesome. Kind of going back a little bit to what I mentioned before. So everyone here, again, comes from different backgrounds, comes from studying different things. One question that kind of comes up a lot with people that want to know more about either engineering or just what they need in order to get the job that they want in games. Do you guys feel that having a degree is important to do the work that you do, or is there another path to it?
All right. Guessing we're gonna go in the same order. Gonna take this one first.
Sure, yeah.
But absolutely not. I definitely think that you don't need a classically trained college degree in order to make a game, or to make games, even AAA big games, right? It's really all a matter of practice and discipline, and programming and math and all these things. They're just another form of art, and I think it's just another tool, it's another paintbrush for you to use, and you have to practice. Like a lot of the things doesn't come easy. Graphics in general are granted, it is very difficult. Like some things about games are very, very difficult to do, but that doesn't mean that but you're not going to learn them in college.
You learn them by doing them.
Totally. It's actually kind of like surprising how different my college experience and my high school experience, all that stuff, was to what I do today. It's such a cliche, right? But there's no preparing for the real world. There's no preparing for getting to either build a game or working on a platform or just building a service, and algorithms and stuff. I love that stuff. I think it's so fun. It's still stuff that I read about and stuff that I do on my spare time, but the amount of times I've had to implement a specific sort or talk about memory comes up a lot, so I'll give them that one. But the number of times you have to do classical CS problems is I can count them on one hand. I think it's all about, in my opinion, and at least for what I do, is so much about the user experience. I work with designers way more than I work with data scientists. And some people think they're the same thing, so maybe they're right. Anyway, long answer, but no, I think it's all about where you want to start, what you want to do, and even though this is the engineering panel, making a game is so much more than programming. I would be surprised if anyone starts in programming when they think about wanting to make a game.
Yeah, I don't really have that much to add to what Oscar has said. One thing that I did find that was useful for me from college was, and this is bizarre, but I think that the most useful courses that I took in college, and I took literature, were linguistics, where they took language and they broke it apart and said, well, this is how nouns are supposed to work, and these are, how verbs are actually forming your ideas and how your thoughts are influenced by how things are structured in language. And when you figure out, hey, programming is basically speaking computer language, or taking the syntax of what you're trying to accomplish and telling the computer to do it for you, it became easier for me. And it's one of those things that you say, well, it's almost a little bit counterintuitive, but then it makes sense. And what I found that what I got out of college was basically that confidence that I could learn anything, that I could say, okay, well, I don't know anything about the subject that I'm opening right now, what this file does, what these libraries do, but I can learn it. And having that confidence that even something that is completely unknown to you at the start is going to be something that you can master and use as you go along is vital. But again, that's not a degree. That's just, curiosity applied. And there are things that you do capture in a classical education that help you along the way, but having the paper itself might be useful to say, oh, well, you have that baseline, and people can at least trust that you understand what a loop is and how to get in one and how to get out of it. But beyond that, it is a lot of learning by doing. I don't think I've been in any single project or any two projects that I've worked on where everything's exactly the same, even if we're using Unity, even if we're using the same languages and all the same tools. If you start working on one project and then you stop that project and you start another one, even on your own, you have to almost relearn everything. And the experience that you gather from doing a lot of little projects, a lot of little game jams and all of that stuff makes the process faster, but it doesn't, take it away. You're always, at least from my perspective, starting almost from zero and building up, and experience allows you to do that quickly. So doing is far more valuable than having the degree.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what everyone on the panel said so far. I think you definitely don't need a degree. I think it does help in the sense that big companies, use AI technology to kind of quickly scan through resumes. And so if you having that degree on your resume does like kind of help with that initial filtering out process. There is, however, alternatives, like let's say you go to a boot camp, or it's all about building your network, basically. Like, if you don't want to, like, a lot of colleges provide is a network, right? Not only just like the curriculum and the formal education, but you're also building a network. But if you decide to not take that route, that's totally fine. But just make sure you also try to build that network, like like do participate in game jams, meet people.
Go to GDC.
Exactly, go to GDC, and just like because you really those having someone to refer you will definitely allow you to skip that initial filtering process that is done by computers. So
Yeah, so I also agree 100% with everyone said. Yeah, most of the tools that I use now, did not learn in college. I learned them on the job, pretty much, like Unity or C#. Like, I didn't do any C# during my college years. But I still think that, like, if you have the opportunity to go to college, I think you should definitely take it. You do learn like the principles of computer science, and those do come useful sometimes, not as often, but yeah. I think if you have the opportunity to go to college, you should definitely do it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I would actually like to add a little bit to that too. Combining what Denise and Carlos said, the network is something that you actually do get from college, because you're placing yourself in a situation where you're in a cohort of people who are going in the same direction, especially with the rise of these video game specific schools. They put you in a context where you're actually driving towards where you want to go at the start. And I wish I had a school in Colombia back in the 90s that told me, hey, video game school, come and learn how to do video games. Even if it was 3 people in a garage, it would have been 3 people I'm sharing an interest with. And if nothing else, it would have been more fun than what I actually got out of college at that point.
Thank you, everyone. So kind of shifting gears a little bit, I want to know a little bit more about your roles and what your day-to-day looks like. I think a lot of folks don't really understand what it's like when you're actually on a team, working with other people with other disciplines and creating a product together. Kind of the ins and outs, the struggles, the triumphs. What does a day look like for you?
So it definitely depends on the project that we're working on. Right now, you're going to hear these kind of things come up a lot in your career, for anyone listening who's interested. But, you'll hear words like agile and scrum and sometimes even waterfall and like weird mixes of all of the above. And even for a specific project, you're going to hear these words like shift throughout development. Like, you might start with waterfall and then kind of shift over to agile or something like that. But really, all it means is that, you're part of a team and you guys are like all driving towards certain milestones. That means different things to different people, but getting an alpha build ready, or getting a beta out in people's hands, or like finally shipping a product, right? Right now, thank God, we shipped. So like we're in a very kind of like agile state right now, which for really just means like, every day we have like these kind of rituals or ceremonies that you'll be doing a lot in your career. Things like stand up, where you kind of check in with how your teammates are doing, like what they're working on, and any blockers, things like that. For most of what I get to do, like I'm the tech lead for my team, which means that we have not super often anymore, but we definitely have like certain discussions every once in a while, like talking about the design of our products and our architecture, not just the visual design, I mean, but like I'm talking about like how databases and stuff all connects to each other. Like, especially on the PlayStation, you look at the UI, you think of You think of like a lot of people just consider it to be like the operating system or something, like that's just what you see, but actually it's so much more complicated than that. And like everything that we do is like there's so much more to it. And specifically, there's a lot of discussions and a lot of like work that has to be planned, like sometimes really, really far ahead of time, to make sure that when a player presses this button, like this is what they're going to see in a specific game. So like for the most part, for our day-to-day, it's either like having meetings to kind of discuss some of these things, like, hey, we want to build this feature and we want to release it sometime in March. Like what do we have to do to make sure that we can hit that milestone? Like, are we going to have to build things ourselves? I work for a very big company, which, for better or for worse, means that there's also a lot of like intra-team dependencies that you have to work out. So that means that you sometimes have to talk with people that maybe you never talked to before, like in a totally different part of the office or a totally different part of the team, and kind of plan that out. But when assuming all that's kind of done and we're just like in execution mode, my day-to-day is normally I work a lot with JavaScript. Every once in a while, maybe some C++ or some C# if we're doing something more specific on the console. But like a lot of what people will see, a lot of like what the UI is, a lot of that's built on JavaScript and a lot of flavors of React Native and things like different tools and stuff that you'll hear about hopefully in your careers if you guys pursue that stuff. In terms of like the tools and stuff that we use, we have a lot of like native things, obviously, that we built in-house to make sure that we can compile and run things on the console. But ultimately, I'm using VS Code, or I'm using my terminal and I'm using Vim for some things. We have our own build pipelines. Like everyone's build pipeline is like super unique, I bet. But it's probably all built in some form of like CMake and stuff like that. Like surprisingly, that's probably the stuff that I found most useful in college is like, just very low level kind of like building stuff. It's gotten so much bigger than that, but that stuff is really cool. Yeah, VS Code, have a lot of like different things. But that's just me. Like I have a teammate, he loves using like JetBrains and products that come from that company. I have other people that are like swear by Emacs and Vim and like they never touch a code editor. And it's not like a pompous or stuck up thing. It's just, you're writing code so often and you're going to write so much code in your life. Like you want to make sure that you're just writing in whatever's comfortable for you. And, for me right now, that's kind of like VS Code and some random plugins that I like to use, and JavaScript.
Along those same lines, I mean, I think that you basically touched on everything, where you have a tool that builds the final build that takes all the code and kind of, spits out something that you drop into a phone or into a console. You have a development environment, which is whatever you're editing code on. You might have a build pipeline as well, a pipeline where you do the collaborative stuff such as Perforce or Git. And my day-to-day is basically jumping between those three things. The meetings with the designers where we're talking about, well, what is this supposed to be doing? How is that supposed to be colored? What is the behavior that you expect to see this? And those are the things. And right now, for better or for worse, it's Zoom and all of those things, because that's our life right now. But
welcome to COVID life.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean, I don't really have anything like super unique to say, oh, well, this one thing is the thing that we really absolutely cannot do without, at least not that I can say without saying, oh, and this is a project that we're working on. So it's being able to, having the tools to access the different components that you're trying to work with. And sometimes that was going to include a server. Sometimes that is going to be with graphics. Sometimes that's going to be just, making sure that the build happens okay. And sometimes it's just negotiating, saying, how long is this going to take you? How long is it going to take me? How much time do we have left? And going from there. I don't know. I don't have anything else to kind of pitch into that.
Right. Yeah, it's just funny to hear everybody's like day-to-day is really similar. I also work on a cross-disciplinary team. So that's like so the way Riot works is, well, we have initiatives, like at the initiative level. I'm in player platform. We work on everything that is like required to have a great experience in a game. So things like chat, things like patching, things like social, all that stuff. Like that's where I live basically. And we like, and you could think of all the games, right? You could consider them their own type of like mini game studios within Riot. So we provide these like an SDK services and all types of things that are required for them to ship their game. And so I've worked on building like microservices for certain things like that. I worked on the beta opt-in service for Valorant, which was really awesome. I got to learn like my day-to-day like typically I get to learn something new, which is great. Like I get to either well, back then the Riot was like a lot more open to or like allowed you to like pick a language. Like if you had a problem, you could just use whatever programming language you wanted to figure it out. So we got to like use Golang and build out services. Right now we're trying to like kind of steer away from that and kind of stick to a few languages. So yeah, I worked on microservices for and then also I worked on patching and that's all primarily in C++. I'm currently working on, I just recently moved to the client team. Our tech stack is also C++, and we do build the front end in using React, using the Chromium embedded framework. I haven't really worked with JavaScript before, so I'm really excited to get to do more front end work and like do more full stack. But I've been primarily working in on the back end and like on the C++ side of things. So my day to day, yeah, it's like stand up. We have planning meetings where everybody joins in. It's not just designer or like you. Well, we work primarily with UX. Designers but like basically everyone from every discipline like for my team, like the client team, we'll all meet and we'll discuss like the experience. Everybody has a chance to provide feedback on all this stuff, and like we try to make sure that everybody from every discipline has an opportunity to like provide that feedback because ultimately those diverse perspectives build better products. And then once we're done meeting, maybe I get like 3 or 4 hours to code. I tried to schedule in some time for like things I put on my PDP, my personal development plan to like for like career growth or things I'm interested in learning. So I try to make time for that. And yeah, just it's aside from like IDE, I use Visual Studio Code. The build stuff is Jenkins, and yeah, nothing too different from you folks. So I won't add much to that. But that's pretty much my day to day. Lots of meetings. As an engineer, I guess I kind of thought that I wasn't gonna have to like interact with people so much. So like soft skills are really important, folks. Yeah, soft skills are very important.
I agree with that sentiment and that statement. We are building games with other people all the time, and knowing how to talk to other people and speak their languages, and not in the sense of like speaking a language from another country. I mean, speaking that person's discipline. Mm-hmm. Knowing how to communicate with them is so important. Carlos?
Yeah, so for me, it's pretty much the same or similar tools. We use Writer as an IDE, GitLab, Unity. One thing that wasn't mentioned is Jira. Probably everyone uses Jira to like be agile, move your tickets, and also stand-up meetings. That's pretty standard for everyone. Yeah, pretty much the same that everyone already mentioned.
Quick question, and you guys can answer this like with one word or two words. Since we've all been working from home for several months now, is there one thing that you've picked up during these few months that have kind of helped you get through the day?
Have a roommate or a partner or a husband or wife or whatever. Just try not to be alone.
Force yourself, and as safe as possible as you can, go outside, get some type of physical activity done. Doesn't matter what it is exactly, just something that doesn't let you kind of just keep on sitting for the rest of your days.
For me, I like to. I think the thing that's really helped me is just building a routine, like, and putting it on my calendar, and just kind of trying to, as best I can, to stick to it. Like, it's really easy to just continue working like after work's done, so trying to be more, mindful of that, and making time to, like, respecting the time and valuing that time that I get to rest and relax, and because it's it yeah, not having people around you as much, not having your coworkers around, not like having, like, I guess that social pressure to not work, like leave your desk and go home, is you can really get caught in that, like caught in that loop without even really like noticing, so yeah, highly recommend having a schedule, and making time for yourself to relax, and yeah, going outside. I need to do that more often for sure.
So I'm gonna plus one, doing physical activity. Um, I've been doing yoga. So there's a yoga class at Niantic 3 times a week that I try to do on Zoom.
Yeah, I see that one on the calendar all the time, and I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll join you. All right. So I want to talk a little bit more about how all of you are taking, or if you are doing this, how are you taking a little bit of like where you come from and who you are as a Latin American living here in the States and working with such diverse teams? How are you bringing a little bit of Latin America into the work that you do, into the culture of your team, and integrating it into the work?
Yeah, I think, it really helps that English is a second language, because everything that we work on, like, localization is a big deal. And I think that not a lot of people think about that at first. And especially like when you start working on projects, like something like a bad string can really kind of break a whole design. And as an engineer, I think like I hate doing things more than once. So it's kind of like really scrutinous, and it's really easy. It's like such a simple thing to overlook, but it's like, what does this look like in Spanish? What does it look like in Russian? What does it look like in German? Like, oh, see, it's not going to fit. So we have to do something else. And the only other thing I wanted to add to that is like, I want to build things that are simple enough that my parents could understand, because they have no idea like what goes into a lot of these things. And even I all of us work so hard, and like everyone works really hard, and ultimately my parents are very not strict, but they're very like, they don't care. Like, they will look at a Netflix button and be like, why is this button over here? This makes no sense. I don't understand what this shuffle button means. Like, so I try to bring that into perspective. Like, if I was my dad or if I was my mom, like, could I understand how to work this thing? And so yeah, try to bring a simple perspective into things.
One of the things that, I mean, I guess every culture might pride itself of being this, but one of the things that I definitely see as inherently Latin American is this attitude of problem solving by whatever means you have available to you. It's not like, oh, well, we have to just, create something brand new that is going to be super expensive and super elaborate. It's the guy that, fixes his car during the road trip with some silk stockings so that he can drive at least home. And it's not like, oh, well, call the mechanic. We don't have that sort of that mentality of support structure is going to be there at every time, and we can just call AAA. No, it's, where are the socks? Fix the engine on your own and get home on your own. And that sort of approach, it's not like bullheadedness, but it can come across as such. But that approach of solving your problems in whatever way you can, as long as it's graceful enough to be sustainable, go for it. And That's one thing. And the other thing is the vast amounts of Colombian coffee that I am consuming every day in order to be able to get things done. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the little things, a lot of the little sort of atomic. I don't know if it's just Latin American per se, but it's little attitudes that really I don't see be a global thing. Localization is one of those things. For example, being able to say, "Hey, the play button is not going to work for all languages, and you're going to have to separate that string like 3 or 4 times for Spanish alone," is also invaluable. So,
How many times have you said that to me?
yes, yes, and
Yeah, no, good.
Basically, it's having that second lens that you can say, okay, this this mainstream sort of camera that I can look at this and find the solution. But what if I turn the angle a little bit to the side and look at it with malicia indígena would be the phrase that they would use in Colombia, which translates to, it's not really translatable. I don't think that that term can be translated. So it's looking at it like askance, more like it, and taking it from there.
Let's see. What if actually, Caesar, you just made me realize something about myself. I'm like, I didn't. That's definitely the perspective. I'm always that person that's like, well, someone proposes something like a brand. Oh, we need to build this brand new system, and I'm always that person to be like, well, like, do we really? Like, we have all these. Just like light bulb moment right now. Anyway, yeah, I didn't know that. Maybe that came from my culture. That's so cool. Anyway, so for me, let's see. I guess being like I'm from like East LA, and I'm Mexican American, and I think one of the things that I guess I feel like I've always brought to the table is just like resilience. And like I feel like I always if things are like, I don't want to encourage, like, crunching is bad and all that, but I have definitely like I would like I like will do my like put my most effort into something, like even if this like odds are stacked against us or in something, or like I have had, like, this is definitely I think in terms of kind of in my career, moving from QA to software engineering, that was like a path that wasn't really well fleshed out when I was at Riot. Uh, like, it was something that I had to like basically carve a path to, and it was really hard, and I had to basically work 2 jobs to kind of, okay, I'm doing the engineering work, and I'm also making sure that my day-to-day stuff is that things are getting tested, and that we don't like break patching for players, because that would be awful. So like I always bring that resilience to something. If I don't know, if I haven't, if I take on a new problem, and like it's either in a programming language I've never used, like I don't just like give it to somebody else. I'm like, I want to persevere, I guess. And then another thing, I feel like this isn't really engineering related, but I think something that I brought to like from my culture is just like, I guess, trying like the importance of like community building, or like making the how do I try to say this, like, how your parents came to this country to like, or family came to this country to give you a better opportunity, right? And so it's still very hard. Like, when I came into Riot, it was like there weren't a lot of like Latinx people at Riot. It was pretty lonely. And so something that I've like, over the years, I've found a few folks, and together we built out the ERG for the Latinx folks at Riot. So I was part of the co-founding group for that. So we're building that community internally, because like we should encourage other folks from our communities to join us, because there's still like, we still have a long ways to go in terms of that representation. So I always try to like, I want to make it better for people that are trying to break in, or because it doesn't need to be that hard, I think. And like I think that's something that our families did for us at some point, or most of them did, or you're doing yourself, right? So I always try to those are the things I think I bring.
Nice. So for me, it's also the localization that always happens. But also I mean, Coralie and Cesar too. We've been we created Nianticos at Niantic, which is the ERG for Latinx people. So that's great. But also not only internally, but externally. So our player base for Ingress. So Ingress has these events called anomalies, where people get together. Or before COVID, people can get together and like in a city and battle for like the control of the city, pretty much. So 2 years ago, I went to Mexico City representing Niantic, and I met a lot of the players, and just being able to communicate with them like in Spanish, that was awesome. And like I still, like last year, I went to a different anomaly also in Mexico, in Guadalajara, and just like I met all these great people that play the game, and like I keep up with them. It's pretty awesome. Also, like now I have to like I get bugs from them, and like I have to submit them and stuff. But yeah, it's yeah, that's what I bring to the table, I guess.
There's actually a couple of things that came to mind after it came by, and it speaks to what everybody else has been saying: perseverance and improvisational skills and the ability to tackle problems that way. It's Latin Americans as a whole, I feel, and maybe I shouldn't be saying this myself, but we have an adventurous sort of spirit, I feel. Like there's something that is, about going into the unknown that attracts us. And if you look back at, what are the things that have huge resonance in Latin America? Things like the stories of heroes that overcome adversity. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing, at least, one of those little nerdy moments is the amount of popularity that Dragon Ball Z has throughout Latin America cannot be overstated. And it's hours upon hours of national TV, just blasting DBZ and people watching it, people taking, knowing the thing. And I think
a lot of people don't realize how we're huge otakus in Latin America. We're like,
there's also things like mariachi entertainment system, which is the mariachi band that covers things like Legend of Zelda and other video game soundtracks, and they do that because it speaks to them, and it's the adventure, I feel, that also kind of reaches down and pokes at the Latin American soul. But yeah, sorry, I just
that was a great point. Like I was just gonna talk a little bit about that as well. Like, you guys are talking about resilience and perseverance and resourcefulness is like a huge one too. Like myself, that's something, I'm from Puerto Rico, and that's something that I've seen consistently with other Puerto Ricans, just the sheer amount of resourcefulness, because we don't have a lot back on the island, because we've kind of had to carve out our own paths, because we don't have the same benefits and the same advantages and the same reach as others would have in other countries. So resourcefulness is something that like I see all the time with multiple people, different parts of Latin America, and is a great segue into our next question. So has there ever been like a specific example where you or your team overcame a difficult challenge? And if you can talk about it, how did you do that? How were you resourceful with your team, and what were some positive takeaways from it?
So I think especially if you're making a game and like these big games that can take years and years, I would say the past 3 to 4 years have been actually very difficult. But specifically, like one thing that from my experience that was very difficult, a challenge that we had to overcome was, you know, for all the things that I work on, a lot of things that like all of us work on, people tend to really think about just the end users, right? Like the people that are buying the games or the people that are buying the stuff and plugging it in. But like, we have so much work and so many tools and so many things that we have to build for game developers. And one thing that was really difficult for us is, especially, you're working on the PS5. A lot of the stuff that we had to do was obviously like in secret, or we couldn't really talk about it to anyone. Making game is the same thing, right? Like you want to keep that stuff secret for as long as you can until stuff starts to kick out. But at some point, we really had to involve game development and be like, hey, this is what we're building. Here are our SDKs. Here are the APIs we're providing. Like, here's all the cool stuff you can do, and like this is the vision. This is what we want to integrate. And there's a really hard problem there about balancing like how early you want to drive that information so that it works. And like to anyone listening, you might just think like, why don't you guys just loop in game developers as early as possible? And I mean, yes, that'd be awesome. But the short answer is because like most of the time, like they don't care. Like they're just focused on building their game, and building games is very, 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 very difficult now. And it takes a long time. And even, we had a bunch of games at launch, and, stuff happens. There's always like bugs, there's like shippables that you just have to live with. And there's like day one patches now. There's this whole ecosystem where you have to kind of like build on that stuff. So anyway, the trouble that we had was like, by the time we actually got to a point where we can like share all the stuff that we were building with like some of our partners, that's when all the feedback starts coming in. That's when like the floodgates open, and some people are excited, some people are not excited. Some people have like tons of feedback, good and bad. And then now you have like this timing problem of like, we're shipping the PS5 at this date. How much of that feedback can we incorporate in time? And not only for launch, but also for, people that are making like the day one patch versions of the game and stuff like that. So I can't go too much into specifics about like, but I would love to in the future. But yeah, I think like it's difficult to, how to categorize that feedback, how to internalize that feedback, especially like, I don't know how you guys feel. Maybe you guys feel the same way, but like, especially when you work on something for so long, you get kind of like, it's my child, you get a little defensive sometimes if like, there could be 99 good comments and you get that one bad comment and it's like, oh, it's the one that stings. But yeah, you want to be mindful and like, and then you want to make sure that like you're building something that they want to use, because if they don't want to use it, then you're not going to use it. And games are the number one priority, and it's very easy to like, just say you're not going to integrate with a certain thing. But like, luckily we were able to like take in a lot of that feedback, make sure that it gets in time. And, if you guys are using Game Help on your PS5s, just thank the game developers for providing really good feedback in order to use it.
A challenge. Oscar has basically highlighted everything where I don't at least think of, oh, this one problem, this one bug. I mean, you always have that one bug that you love to talk about. The one thing that you say, oh yeah, anytime anybody asks me about a bug, I'll talk about that bug. But it's not like a challenge that was very hard to contend with. It's always this protracted thing where there's always these sort of moments that are difficult rather than situations in very punctual situations that are difficult. It's as we lose our sense of time, it's months and weeks and years that might seem like the challenging part, and then you passed it and it doesn't look so bad in the rear view mirror because you passed it. But one of the things that it's an ongoing challenge, even for me to this day, it's whenever I'm building something new, and whether it's because I'm new to the team, whether it's because I come from a different background than most of the people that I work with or so on, it's gaining that trust for the things that you build that first time around. So just very quickly, the example is you get a task. Your task is to build a system that is going to do X or Y, and then you build a system, and then it has to be integrated. And as Oscar says, stuff happens. And the system might break once, and then they come back to you and they say, hey, the system is broken, fix it, and so on and so forth. And it's gaining the trust of the people that you're working with, where the thing that you integrate and the systems that you build have implicit trust. Where, let's say I was working on something that flips the buttons the other side when you can't click them or something like that, and the buttons aren't flipping. And they say, well, and of course, it's the system that flips the buttons that's broken here. It's not the button itself. It's not the rest of the game. It's not that the game has crashed. No, it's the button flipping system that just went in. So come here, fix this. You broke it. And then you have to go in and deal with that lack of trust that exists, at least that's the start. And it's building that up where a team says, hey, something is broken, but we can't really tell what. So we're not going to immediately point to the last person that joined the team and tell them to fix it. It's, let's figure out exactly the solution together as a team. And it's getting to that point.
Yeah, it's let me see if I can find a different example, because mine is very similar to Oscar's as well. Let me think. From an experience on my team, because I was going to talk about the initiative, and because we were also shipping games as well, and for the first time we shipped a ton of games, and having to onboard all these games onto our system and our ecosystem was extremely challenging, and we had to kind of rush a lot of things, and we were able to build we were able to address a lot of we got a lot of feedback from these teams, and got and we're able to kind of fix certain things that were within reason, but a lot of things we had to kind of just do quickly, because and so we just got a lot of tech debt as a result from that, and so now now that we ship the games, we have a little bit of breathing room. We're going to get to we're spending time in addressing, kind of retroactively looking at, okay, how do we make sure we're not caught off guard again? How do we make sure that the onboarding experience is better? We actually have technical writers now to help with our docs, because this is all very new to us, and so we have a really awesome group of tech writers who are helping us build out our docs, so it's easy to onboard onto our tools for different for different projects and things like that, and we're also, on my team, we're addressing that tech debt. We recently rewrote one of the systems that was just giving us a really hard time. We actually had the ability to do that, so we're making sure that we look at the past and acknowledge that it was crappy, but to just not leave it at that and try to make things better now that we have the breathing room to do so.
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to talk about something that happened early in my career at a different company. So we had this task of creating an AI system, and I was pretty new in the industry back then. And I don't know, also the Latinx thing, where suffering imposter syndrome, or maybe still doing that. But so the task was kind of huge, and it was, at the beginning, it was just me. And I mean, at the end, we deliver the AI, but other two people more experienced people had to help me. And pretty much I was able to work together with them and understand what was being built and building it, right? So it kind of goes back also to the resourcefulness that we have, and perseverance. Yeah, so at the end we finished the system, and the other engineers would also go to me for any questions about the system. So at the end, it made me feel good about it, and just being able to know that I created that and we created it together. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you touch upon a really important point, which is knowing that it's okay to ask for help, and knowing when you should ask for help too, and knowing that your team is gonna kind of have your back as well. Like, at least my experience has been like that, where you have to identify it and be like, hey, can you help me with this,
balancing
please?
act, right? Like Caesar mentioned, like Caesar said, you're trying to build that trust so people trust you with that system and all that. And but you're also, you gotta ask for help when you're stuck, because that's just the way, you're so used spinning cycles on stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah, and Denise, you also mentioned something really important there, that you mentioned really quickly about tech debt, and like whoever is watching this, please have no, like, we are not perfect companies. That's why there's bugs in the code, right? There's always stuff like you have to do. There's so much tech debt, and never feel bad about asking for help with tech debt, because the reason tech debt is there is because someone either couldn't figure out the answer when they needed to, or they had to move to something else. So like, tech debt exists. In your career, you'll hopefully see a lot of comments in code saying that like, we have to do it this way, or to do or something. So it's meant for you will do this yourself at some point. So like, just expect people to come ask you for help or something like that. It's pretty good career in general for asking for help.
Oh yeah, definitely. Want to ask a little bit about how each of you measure your own personal success when you're working on teams or companies, and maybe a little bit about how that either meets or maybe sometimes even conflicts with like corporate expectations.
Yes, that I think as you grow into your career more and more, that becomes a much harder question to answer. I think like back when I was starting out, it was a lot simpler. Like I never measured things like lines of code or anything, so that was lucky. But earlier in my career, it was very easy to measure by like number of PRs opened, or number of Jira tickets that I completed, or how many features that I shipped or something. But as you kind of do it more, like right now, I kind of focus a lot more on just like feedback. I care a lot more about like quality. Like, are we hitting our load time metrics? Like, the stuff that I'm doing, is it leading to load times of under, X seconds, which is, whatever we set up our target to be, or, the number of users that are experiencing bugs, is it within a certain threshold and stuff like that? Like, and in my experience, at least, like, I've gotten to define a lot more about what I want my metrics of success to be. I think when you're starting out, there's always kind of like this programmer template of like, yeah, maybe it is just Jira tickets for now, or code reviews and stuff like that. But people run out of that kind of stuff after a while, and you will probably write less code the more you're in this career anyway. So yeah, I measure my success in those kind of terms. I care a lot about quality, and luckily I've gotten to a point where like my company agrees to that too. So it kind of overlaps a lot. So I was pretty happy about it.
I actually had to think a lot about this question in particular, because I don't think that I could answer the same way, just, corporate expectations. It's like, what were the expectations that were at that job? What were the expectations that I had when I had that title? And it's a matter of, I mean, if I were to answer this early in my career when I was a QA analyst, it would be, well, how many bugs did we catch? How many did we fix? How many were the escape bugs that got out the door? And, dealing with that sort of, expectation at that point. But as an engineer, it's more along the lines of how many problems were I able to solve today, and versus the expectation of how many systems was I able to complete and, see out the door this sprint or this quarter. And for me, the conflict is not really there when things are healthy. You don't have to go up against corporate as though you're fighting or wrestling with them when things are actually working fine. When you're in a structure that doesn't have unrealistic expectations, or a structure where the KPIs are completely separate from the actual work that you do. So, I mean, I would say that I would measure success in seeing the things that I build with my team uh, being delivered, being displayed, and working, and ticking along, and doing the things that they're supposed to do, and breaking the ways that they're supposed to break when they actually do break. And that is not something that I can say, well, corporate expects something different. It's just a matter of where you are at that time, because there are places that are going to be like, yeah, we don't care about your success. We don't care that the game is working. We care that the game is shipped and how many, ARPDAO or how many dollars per hour we're generating out of this item. And that's different. It's, apples and oranges in my perspective.
So the way I measure my own personal success, I think it's for me. It's just, am I challenging myself? Is this problem? Am I? What's the impact I'm making? I think if I don't like having to redo something, or like I don't like being bored. I think that's like engineering gives you challenging problems, and I keep, if it's right now, like getting to, if I get to stretch myself and learn something that, like work in a space that's either completely new to me, or I'm tackling like just a really complicated problem that feels like really fulfilling. There's also like the in terms of impact, like am I getting opportunities to like I'll try to seek out opportunities to, because we have tech leads, we have a tech lead on my on all teams, but we have something called like tech captain as well, where that like this provides individual contributors the opportunity to gain those like, skills that the tech leads have, and just get opportunity to lead a project. So like if it's a new system that we're building, we get the opportunity to come up with the technical design, kind of shepherd it from and get folks aligned and get that, and then also contribute code to it. So like getting those opportunities, like if that's a huge win for me. I feel like and just getting more opportunities to grow as an engineer, I think that those are huge for me. And then also just have working somewhere that gives me the time to also do things, or like work on things that I care about that aren't engineering related, like like the our ERG for instance, or also like I'm volunteering through Riot, as part of Teals. I'm like teaching computer science, and they let me, they're like totally fine with me doing that, a few times a week, and because it's something that's important to me. So like being able to have that work somewhere that where they, I'm also, I'm contributing to, and adding player value, and meeting their KPIs, but they're also giving me what I need to make a fulfilling career at the company.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, there's always the things that you have to deliver for your team, the engineering task. So definitely those, the features that you have to deliver. So that's the main thing, right? But at the same time, I think as like Latinx and people of color, we have to look at the other work that we do, like for example, this, right? Or Nianticals at Niantic, or we have we do have, so Niantic does give us some time to be able to volunteer. We get like a day every 3 months, and we can take the day to volunteer for something. Yeah, but I think as Latinos or Latinx people, we have to push the company so that the corporate expectations or our work towards bringing more a more diverse workforce counts towards those expectations. So we need to push to align corporate expectations with what we want as people. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with kind of all of you in some form or another. Like me as a UX designer, apart from just the job that I do every day, like I know I'm being successful when I'm doing things like this. I'm bringing people in to be able to talk about the work that they do, bringing in those perspectives and highlighting what it is we do in Latin America so that people know, like, hey, we're out here. One last question for the night. You know, I don't know if all of us knew that we were going to be in games. I definitely didn't. And specifically working in the field that I do, I never in my life thought I was going to be a UX designer. Looking back, I wish someone would have given me great advice. What kind of advice would you have given yourselves when you were trying to break in?
I would have told myself to be a little bit more patient. You know, sometimes problems are really hard, and you're not going to solve them like, you know, in a day or a week. And you know, you start out for a reason. But actually, I think the best piece of advice that I ever got, which, you know, luckily I did hear it when I was a kid, and you know, anyone who's hearing it here, I would like to, you know, give it to them. But like, take an art class. You know, do something that's going to help your perspective. Programming is just, you know, one dimension in all the art and stuff that we make. Like, take a drawing class, take a music class, take anything that'll kind of help you, you know, flex the other half of your brain a little bit more.
In my case, there's 3 pieces of advice that I wish I had known when I was younger, which I'm still trying to cling on to right now, which is, and in reverse order of importance. First one is, like Oscar and Denise and Carlos have said already, stuff happens, and you have to basically take that in stride. It's not always going to be perfect. Things are going to break, and you're going to have to react to that. The other thing is that, as far as the game industry is concerned, there are no shortcuts, and you're never going to get the whole picture of the career or the trajectory that the guy sitting or a person sitting next to you has had in order to get to where they are. And the journey that they've taken might be, you know, much longer than yours, even though you might feel that it isn't, or they might have, you know, challenges that they're about to face, or they faced other challenges that you couldn't even imagine. So, yeah, stuff happens. There are no shortcuts. And last but not least, by far, is no work is ever wasted. Even if it feels like you're just, you know, building a little game jam, and that's just something that you're doing for a couple of hours. And yeah, it was effort, but nothing is going to come from that. Or I spent, not as an example, but as a hypothetical, I've spent, you know, a couple of months working with these people, working on an app that never came to anything. We never made any money. We put it on a store for, you know, however many times, and it's never ranked anything or done anything, you know, amazing. Or I wrote a tool that read spreadsheets really fast, and that's all it ever did. And then I just kind of forgot about it on a hard drive. All of that work that you do, as long as you're doing something that is related to where you are aiming to go, or even if it isn't, and even if it's something that just interests you, that work and that experience colors you in a way where the challenges that you have to really meet and overcome is going to be easier because of the work that you did in the past. And you're not wasting your time by putting in the effort. That's pretty much it.
So if I were to go back in time, let's see, I guess I would try to try not to be as shy, I guess, and try to find other folks like me with the same passions. Like, I did go to school for computer science, but I was like one of the handful of women in the class, and I worked almost full time, and so like I drove to school and I went to work, and so like I felt that whole experience, it was very isolating, and it definitely, I think, in looking back on it, helped, like, really did didn't do me much good in terms of imposter syndrome, right? Like I felt like I was alone. I didn't feel like, especially I'd look at there were many times where I'd like go onto like Blizzard's hiring page and be like scrolling through the jobs and be like, oh no, there's no way like somebody like me is gonna end up here, right? And if like I had people around me to like kind of cheer me on or just instill, because I eventually found that at Riot really, and I had wonderful mentors that like inspired me and encouraged me, and like if I wish I could have found that earlier, so especially so if I had any advice, I think especially for women like going into engineering, like try to build, like find that community, like if it's on Twitter, if it's on Discord, whatever, just like find people, if you're in school and is a community there, like find a group of women or people that you're like you all have the same passions, and build that, because it will help you build that confidence that you need to like to believe in yourself, to break into the industry and to thrive there. I got that a little later in life, but I'm happy I did, and like get it as soon as possible is all I have to say.
Yeah, so plus 1,000 to what Denise said. Yeah, so I had a similar experience during college. It was kind of isolating too. If I could go back, it would be try to grow your network even since since college. And like try to get together with people, with like-minded people who have like similar objectives. In this case, break into the game industry, right? Also, look for an internship if it's possible and if you can, or as people said before, work on a side project. That would be that's really helpful for when you're trying to get into the industry. And don't give up. Just continue trying, and that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that last bit too. Like we should, just because someone says no once to an application or whatever, it's not going to be the end of the world. Keep trying, keep doing it. You want to be an engineer, keep trying, keep doing it. Whatever it is that you feel passionate about. Like myself at Niantic, took me 2 tries to get into Niantic. And I know several people, wonderful people, incredibly skilled, took several tries to get into Blizzard and Riot and Google and all these other places. Just keep trying. Don't get knocked down by just like the first attempt.
Failing hurts. It will always hurt, but it's just one of those things where you have to get comfortable with it. And with that, like when you feel that like sting, you're making progress. Like that's kind of the way to, like, if you want to frame it in a positive way. A failure is like you gain something from that. You're learning something, and you're getting closer. So don't back down.
Yeah, learn from your failures.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, I wanted to thank all of you for being part of this panel. By chance, is there anywhere people can follow you on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, or maybe even like gamer tags or anything? Right there for Oscar, right there for Denise. For me, it's, hold on, right there. The others, well,
just
maybe
look me up on
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn.
Yeah, same thing.
Just send them bugs on Ingress.
And I wanted to plug real quick for folks to follow Latinx Games Festival on Twitter. You'll find out all the information for the upcoming panels for the rest of the weekend. And once again, thank you everyone so much for joining us and for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good one.